Chapter 24. In his days Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon came up, and Jehoiachin became his servant 3 years. Then he turned and rebelled against him. And the Lord sent against him bands of the Chaldees, and bands of Syrians, and bands of the Moabites, and bands of the children of Ammon, and sent them against Judah to destroy it, according to the word of the Lord, which he spake by his servants the prophets. Surely at the commandment of the Lord came this upon Judah, to remove them out of his sight for the sins of Manasseh, according to all that he did, and also for the innocent blood that he shed, for he filled Jerusalem with innocent blood, which the Lord would not pardon. Now the rest of the acts of Jehoiakim and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the king of Judah? So Jehoiakim slept with his fathers, and Jehoiachin his son reigned in his stead. And the king of Egypt came not again any more out of his land, for the king of Babylon had taken from the river of Egypt unto the river Euphrates all that pertained to the king of Egypt. Jehoiachin was 18 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned in Jerusalem 3 months. And his mother's name was Nehushta, the daughter of Elnathan of Jerusalem. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that his father had done. At that time the servants of Nebuchadnezzar king of Babylon came up against Jerusalem, and the city was besieged. And Nebuchadnezzar the king of Babylon came against the city, and his servants did besiege it. And Jehoiachin the king of Judah went out to the king of Babylon, he and his mother and his servants and his princes and his officers, and the king of Babylon took him in the 8th year of his reign. And he carried out thence all the treasures of the house of the Lord, and the treasures of the king's house, and cut in pieces all the vessels of gold which Solomon king of Israel had made in the temple of the Lord, as the Lord had said. And he carried away all Jerusalem, and all the princes, and all the mighty men of valor, even 10,000 captives, and all the craftsmen and smiths. None remained, save the poorest sort of the people of the land. And he carried away Jehoiachin to Babylon, and the king's mother, and the king's wives, and his officers, and the mighty of the land, those carried he into captivity from Jerusalem to Babylon. And all the men of might, even 7,000, and craftsmen and smiths 1,000, all that were strong and apt for war, even them the king of Babylon brought captive to Babylon. And the king of Babylon made Mattaniah, his father's brother, king in his stead. And he changed his name to Zedekiah. Zedekiah was 21 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. And his mother's name was Hamutal, the daughter of Jeremiah of Libnah. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. For through the anger of the Lord it came to pass in Jerusalem and Judah, until he had cast them out from his presence, that Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon. Now, we're almost at the end of the kingdom of Judah. We're in the winding up scene here. Now, in the very beginning when we meet Nebuchadnezzar, he is a prince of the Babylonian Empire. A very powerful prince, having captured much territory, etc., etc. And Jehoiakim, K-I-M, is the king of Judah. And Nebuchadnezzar comes and he captures the city, takes it over, and Jehoiakim serves him, in other words, sends him tribute for 3 years, and then rebels against him. And then Nebuchadnezzar comes again, and this time he takes home as captives 3,023 people, probably including Daniel and Ezekiel, who write the Old Testament books of their name. And at the same time that he gets them back to Babylon, his father dies, and so he now becomes Nebuchadnezzar the king. Now Jehoiakim dies. It says he slept with his father. And sometimes that means that it was a peaceful transition, but in this particular case we learn from another prophet that he got what was called the burial of an ass, which means no burial whatsoever. what they did was they took him outside of the gates of Jerusalem, and because he rebelled even while he was captured, and they killed him and just threw him off on the side of the road. So, his son, Jehoiachin, reigned in his stead underneath the Nebuchadnezzar's rule. And we learn that he was a powerful young man and absolutely had no conscience whatsoever. It says he devoured men, that he ravished their widows, and he took what he wanted. He did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord. You wonder whether or not people ever get the message, but it doesn't seem so. Now, the temple was desecrated 3 times by Nebuchadnezzar alone. First time he took some of the things of Solomon. The second time there were some other things that were taken that the people actually were able to bring back when they came back, when Cyrus was the king. And last but not least, we have another person who comes in, is Mattaniah. And he was an uncle to Jehoiakim, who had been the king. And he did evil too. And there were righteous men who were called to testify against the people and against the king and against the evil. But none of them would take it seriously. But the Lord basically, I think, with all of these witnesses against the king and the people and the idol worship and all the rest of it, basically was doing 2 things. Anybody who had any spirit of repentance, any willingness to live according to the Lord, would have known that it was time to get out if you hadn't gotten out already. And we know there were people who left at this time, about 600 years before Christ, if memory serves. And that they went other places and they were preserved. But all those people who stayed wound up part of the Babylonian captivity. That was it. We'll see what happens in the next chapter.